Trump stunned as James Comey reveals hidden White House tapes.
We're learning more about how Florida insurance attorney Lindsay Halligan, now an interim U.S. attorney, maybe, just barely managed to indict former FBI Director James Comey days before the statute of limitations were set to expire. Last week, Halligan, who had never prosecuted a single case in her entire career, whose only appearances in federal court were as one of Donald Trump's personal lawyers, was abruptly installed to lead one of the country's most important prosecutors' offices. And she got right to work on her first ever grand jury presentation, obviously ordered by the president, right? By all accounts, it was not an easy task, nor did it go smoothly. She not only took the unusual step of signing the two-page long double-spaced indictment herself, something a junior career prosecutor typically handles, although possible no one was willing to do it. But people familiar with the matter tell CNN that DOJ headquarters declined to provide lawyers to assist her, and FBI agents and lawyers working to prepare her were denied their request for a paralegal professional to assist in the presentation. In the end, only 14 of the 23 grand juries voted to indict Comey on only 2 of the 3 counts, narrowly clearing the 12-vote threshold. So, Halligan's first time in the court as a prosecutor did not go smoothly either. As the New York Times reports, at one point, she entered the wrong courtroom. Mistakes can happen. When she found the right one, she stood on the wrong side of the judge and then appeared confused about the paperwork she had just signed. A court transcript obtained by CBS News gives details to that interaction. So this has never happened before. I've been handed the 2 documents that are in the Mr. Comey case that are inconsistent with one another, Judge Lindsay Valla said to Halligan. After a back and forth about the documents, Halligan said, I only signed the 1 2-count indictment. I don't know which one with 3 counts you have in your hand. Okay, it has your signature on it, Judge told Halligan, who responded, okay, well. Even after all of that, it also seems completely possible the entire thing could just get thrown out as an invalid case because, as a conservative lawyer argued in the National Review, it seems highly doubtful that Lindsay Halligan has been validly appointed as the United States attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. And president of the Society for the Rule of Law, and he joins me now. George, there's a bunch of sort of weedsy details about how you can be a U.S. attorney or not. Now, the sort of general principle people know is that this is a Senate-confirmed position, importantly so. You get appointed by the president, you get confirmed by the Senate. In some emergency situations or interim situations, people can get named as actings. But there's like real pretty settled like law tradition about who gets to do that. And it's really not clear that Halligan even can fill the role that she currently is in now.
Yeah, she has no more authority than you or I or my 2 corgis to present an indictment to a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia. And the reason is quite simple. There's this federal statute, 28 U.S.C. 546, that basically says, it expresses one of the ways in which a U.S. attorney, a temporary U.S. attorney, can be put in. And this is the installation of what's called an interim U.S. attorney. And the way it happens is if there's a vacancy in the office, a Senate-confirmed person leaves the job, then the Attorney General can appoint somebody, but only for 120 days. After that 120 days expires, then the judges of the district court in the district where the U.S. Attorney's office is can then appoint somebody to succeed that interim U.S. attorney as another interim U.S. attorney. And what happened here was there was a fellow named Siebert who had that 120-day appointment from the Attorney General and then was reappointed by the district judge. But the president didn't like him because he didn't want to file this stupid and meritless indictment against Comey. And so he resigned. And so bingo, here we have Lindsay Halligan, never appeared in a federal criminal case before, barely knows where to find her way in the courtroom. But I have to give her credit. I mean, if what had happened to her that day had happened to me, I'd want to crawl under a rock and never be heard from again. But
welcome back to The Takeout. Thank you for hanging out with us. Transcripts from the court session where a federal grand jury returned the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey reveal the prosecution's handling of the case left the judge confused. Comey was ultimately charged with 1 count of making false statements to Congress and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Scott McFarland joins us now. Why the confusion?
Well, the new U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, in her first job ever as a prosecutor, signed 2 different charging instruments in this case, which is Untraditional. The judge, according to the transcript, said she'd never seen this before, but isn't going to impact the case itself. We know that late this afternoon, the formal record was submitted that Patrick Fitzgerald will be James Comey's defense lawyer, powerhouse defense attorney and former U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Illinois. We know James Comey goes for an arraignment Thursday, a week from Thursday, in Alexandria, Virginia. But there's always the possibility, Major, the Department of Justice comes in with a superseding indictment, a newer, larger indictment that adds more charges, or at least adds more detail to a bare bones charging document so far.
Why are you thinking that might happen?
Because so little is in this initial indictment. There's such little detail. It's boilerplate almost. It's barely a page and a half. And these allegations against the high-profile defendant could come with a larger explanation, more details, or even more charges before now and then.
Scott, importantly, over the weekend, the president and others around him in the echo chamber of MAGA began to talk about FBI agents and January 6th and pre-positioning or involvement. Help my audience, help our audience understand fact and fiction.
Well, let me draw the connective tissue first to James Comey. The president last night indicated that he may seek or monitor an investigation of former FBI Director Chris Wray, who oversaw the FBI's response to January 6th. In the same weekend, though, the president perpetuated a conspiracy theory that FBI agents may have been on the ground and helped incite the Capitol riot, citing some new reporting with some newly released FBI documents. What those documents show, according to a review by CBS News, is there were FBI agents who responded to the insurrection, were there after the attack began. There's been no indication, none, that anybody in the FBI was part of firing up or directing the crowd. And we know that in part because the documents don't show that. There's been no evidence of that in 4.5 years. And about 1,500 January 6 defendants sought to defend themselves. Not one ever offered.
This whole episode with Lindsay Halligan and the rushed indictment of James Comey is a perfect snapshot of how Trump twists institutions for his own ends, even when it means breaking them in the process. Trump put one of his own personal lawyers, someone who had never prosecuted a single case, in charge of one of the most important U.S. attorney's offices in the country, not because she was qualified, not because she had the trust of the Senate, but because she would do what he wanted: indict Comey. That alone shows how Trump sees the Justice Department, not as an independent body, but as his personal law firm toy. The results speak for themselves. Halligan stumbled through her first case like a law school intern thrown into the big leagues. She literally walked into the wrong courtroom, stood on the wrong side of the judge, and got confused by her own paperwork. At one point, the judge confronted her with 2 different indictments carrying her signature. Her response: basically, I don't know. It makes no sense. The deeper problem goes beyond Halligan's pure incompetence. It's the illegitimacy of her appointment. U.S. attorneys require Senate confirmation. There are narrow exceptions, yet none apply here. Halligan had no confirmation. She wasn't even in the Justice Department. She came straight from Trump's inner circle, handpicked for loyalty, and only loyalty. As George Conway pointed out, she had no more authority to sign that indictment than you, me, or a couple of dogs on the street, which means the indictment itself could just be invalid from the start. And since the statute of limitations has already expired, the case is effectively dead. Think about that. Trump bent the system so far out of shape that his own handpicked prosecutor may have even killed the case before it started. All that chaos, all that effort to weaponize the DOJ against a political enemy, and in the end, it could collapse under the weight of his own illegality. The pattern is obvious. Trump has no concern for competence, legality, or tradition. He only values loyalty. He installs people who serve him first and the law second, if at all. That's how you end up with someone who can barely navigate a courtroom standing in front of a grand jury on one of the most high-profile indictments in years, and end up looking like a complete failure. The consequences are dangerous, too. Trump corrodes the rule of law itself by treating public officials like patronage jobs. When prosecutors and judges are reduced to political loyalists, justice itself becomes a partisan weapon. That's exactly the environment he cultivates. The irony here is sharp. In trying to punish Comey, Trump may have just handed him a get-out-of-jail-free card. The indictment is weak, the appointment is invalid, and the clock has already run out. It's a mess that Trump engineered himself. A clear warning of how unfit he is to handle power responsibly. Do you want to hear the next note?